This is Patricia Hazell for Patricia's Potpourri. And today, as usual, I have a very, very interesting guest. This guest, you might know him or you know of him. So please stay tuned because there's going to be 2 episodes of this particular guest. This guest today is Mr.
Alvin Reed.
Mr. Alvin Reed. I bet you know him. I bet you know of him. I bet you have been in a place in which he owned. I want to say thank you for being at Patricia's Potpourri,
You're welcome.
Mr. Alvin Reed. Okay, Mr. Reed, what I'd like to speak to you, I want to start the beginning. Could you tell us a little bit about your background? No, where were you born?
I was born in Richmond, Virginia, 1939, June the 14th.
So you have a birthday coming there. You're another Gemini.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And when did you come to New York?
1945 by car with my family.
Mm-hmm. When you came to New York, how did you find, where did you come to Harlem first or where did you come from?
Well, I had 4 brothers and 1 sister. They came ahead of me. I was one of the younger ones, me and my youngest brother. And we came in a car, and when we came into New York and I saw all those bright lights for the first time and stuff like that. So it was really very exciting. And my brothers were staying with my father's sister, and me and my younger brother was staying with my mother's niece. So we hadn't gotten together at that point. Until later on, my father found an apartment on 133rd Street between Lenox and 7th. And so we got the family back together. So it's like 6 children and 2 parents. And we had like a 2-bedroom apartment, one of those they call walk-through or something.
Railroad flat.
Railroad flat, yeah, right.
Right.
So it was kind of crowded in there and stuff like that. But it was great times, and Harlem was very exciting then.
It was so you were all together again. So
Yeah.
so when you got together as a family, what were some of the things that people, your brothers and sisters and you broke out and started to do in Harlem?
Well, first of all, we got indoctrinated in the block. I had to have a couple of fights. You know, I got beat up twice, you know, and, you know, New Yorkers, you know, they knew how to use their fists at that time, and we were more wrestling like that. And so I got beat up and I cried, and this guy came over, his father came and gave me a couple of donuts and stuff like that, and kind of we made up and stuff like that. And we were very excited about Harlem. You know, we was like, they say Harlem is what you call them?
A Mecca, the cultural capital.
No, a community. It's another word for that I can't think of right now. So all the parents looked out for you, for the kids. You know, we went to school, came back home from school by ourselves. We kids just did that. The times wasn't as bad as it got to be later on. But, and what excited us was sports. We had just started playing sports. And we found out that most of my brothers had a lot of talent in basketball, track, swimming. Matter of fact, at age 11, I was a senior lifeguard. I knew how to save people. I excelled in sports, and my older brothers did. Only one of my brothers, Archie, he had no sports talent at all. So he used to, you know, and I remember when we had a dinner in our kitchen, we had dinner together all the time. And my brother, they used to buy, I used to just, I like pancakes. And so I would sell my francs to my brother. because you know, so I can go outside and buy some cookies and stuff like that. But it was really new, and it was very exciting, and that's when I first
came to New York. And New York,
I came to love Harlem,
yes.
you know, and didn't know what the future held. We we were poor but didn't know it at that time, you know, because you know, my mother made sure we was clean, stuff like that. We didn't get in no gangs. We sit outside on the stoops, stuff like that. My mother never stopped on the stoop. You never seen her in the streets. She had an education coming from Columbia, South Carolina. That's where my family is from. But how we got to Richmond, my father got a job up there. He didn't like the farm. So we came to Richmond. His friend wrote him a letter saying they got jobs, and so that's how we got. So I have no family from Richmond, Virginia. It was just a pass-through, and I was born there. I think my mother was pregnant on the trip. And so I was born there, and at the age of 6, I was in Harlem.
What schools did you go to in Harlem?
PS 89 on Lenox Avenue between 134th and 135th. Right now it's the Clayton of housing. It used to be a school right there. And I was like, in Virginia, you don't start school until you were 6. So when I came there, I was a year, but they put me in kindergarten. So then they realized my age, then they put me in the first grade. But it was first time that I was around so many kids, and we had so much fun. You know.
So what else you want to tell me about your education in New York?
My education is from the University of Harlem, which is most of the things that I learned watching people, watching businessmen, watching Mr. Dukes, who had a truckload of watermelons, and I used to go over there and say, "Where you get the watermelons from?" He said, "Didn't you see that truck came from down south?" He said, I said, "So, and then you sell them?" He said, "Yeah, I sell them at a profit." I said, "Oh, okay." Then I saw some of the guys who was taking numbers, and I said, "So how do you work this thing out?" They said, "Well, the numbers come out in the newspapers, and so people bet on the numbers, and we pay 6-1 and stuff like that." Not that I want to do those things, but I just always wanted to find out how people make money. Being that we was poor, we never had any. And I thought it was unfair that people had money and we didn't. So I says, I got to change this, like some kind of way. So I started selling newspapers. Mr. Stanley on 135th and 7th Avenue, he had a candy store, but every Sunday he gets the daily news. And so he let the kids go sell them. And when I look back at my life, that was the first business deal that I ever made. I said, "Mr. Stanley, I'm selling a lot of newspapers here." I says, "And you're giving me 3 cents off each one I sell." I said, "How can I get some more money?" He said, "Well, if you buy the newspapers, I'll sell them to you." The newspaper was 15 cents. He said, "I'll sell it to you for 10 cents, but you can't bring them back. The other way, for 3 cents, you could bring back the ones you haven't sold." So I said, "Okay, I'm going to try this out." So I says, "Give me 15 newspapers." I didn't get the 25 that I usually get because I said, "In case I don't sell them." So then I started selling them. I used to sneak on the subway and walk through the cars, Amsterdam News, Amsterdam News. That came back against me later on in life when I became a police officer. But they had a record for me sneaking under the subway. But I'll talk about that later on. But anyway, and then the New York Jet came out. I started selling the Jet. I bought me a little shoe stand and I started shining shoes. So I did everything from, the ground up, not knowing, not getting advice for anybody, just using my sense of I used to,
Observing and
I talk to senior citizens all the time. If you had to do this all over again, what would you do? And they would tell me the mistakes they made, and I used to listen to that all the time, you know. So, and I went from that to I dropped out of high school,
what
you
high
know,
school did you go to?
Charles Evan Hughes.
There was an incident that happened to you in Charles Evans Hughes, something that you thought that you should have been able to do, but you were kind of ostracized. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, well, I was excellent in sports, swimming, track, softball at that time. And when I went to high school, I wanted to be on the baseball team. And I had played with some of the kids on the team in Central Park, so they knew that I was very good at it. And we had a losing team at Charles Evan Hughes for baseball. And so I went to the coach and asked for a tryout. And the team was predominantly white, and we had 3 black ball players. So the word came out that they didn't want no more black players on the team. So they wouldn't give me a tryout. My father, though I love him, he didn't give us a lot of time, And I know my sisters, sometimes I talk about it. She say, you don't need to tell people everything. But I'm about the truth. And I learned things by the truth, being truthful with yourself and all that. Now, I love my dad, and you can't talk about it, but he wasn't really good for dad. Now, as a man who I am now, I know the things that I do for my kids and stuff like that. I didn't have it there. I didn't go to Coney Island with my father. I didn't go to Park with my father, nothing like that. When he
But
came
can
to,
excuse me, I just
yeah,
want to say, money was kind of rough.
yeah,
And to be able to provide extra
no,
those extra
that's true.
things,
That's true.
might have been an issue
Right.
with your dad,
Yeah.
And I know one thing, I remember, parents, after they had so much pressure on their jobs,
That's true.
till when they came home, all they wanted to do was rest because
Yeah.
the pressure from just being able to provide for you for the daily things in which
Yeah.
you had, the
Yeah, that's
meal
true.
and pay the rent. So sometimes it's a little hard for parents to give you the fringe things, but
Yeah.
especially back then, and
Yeah.
that's when the pressure was on.
Right. And so I got a little upset about, not playing ball because I was good at sports. Sports kept me out of trouble. And when they didn't give me a tryout, I dropped out. And I joined the 369th Armory. Yes.
Wow.
And I wasn't sure what I was doing. I didn't realize that I would be going to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Fort Dix. We thought it was like a drill team and stuff like that. We actually did it because me and about 5 friends of mine, because they pay you $30 a month.
That was a lot of money in
Oh
those
yeah,
days.
yeah. We could take our girlfriends out and stuff. So I didn't know that and actually, I filled out the application. I was 17, which is underage, but my mother had to sign it, but she didn't realize that I hadn't put my birthday in yet. So she signed, it was okay, and then when I got it back, I put in, June 14th, 1938. So that's still on my DD 214. And so we went there and we started getting a little training and going away for the weekends and going to the camps and stuff like, which was a whole nother thing in my life. It got me knowing about fishing, go looking for frogs, looking for snakes and all that stuff. And that came back in my life where I bought some property in the Poconos, and I do those things as an adult. So a lot of those things that I learned then took me for a whole life now. But yeah, it was a good time, but I was shy. I didn't talk to when I got to Charles Evan Hughes, I went there because it was a co-ed school. And my guidance counselor from Frederick Douglass Junior High School, which I went to, and so the counselor just give you 5 minutes. So he says, what school you want to go to? I said, Charles Evan Hughes. He says, okay. He never asked me why. I just was going because it was girls there. I didn't know the curricula or nothing like that. And I got there, and I was so shy when I was young. If a girl look at me, I get nervous, stuff like that. I sat in the back of the class. Even when the teacher asked a question, who knows so-and-so, even if I knew it, I wouldn't raise my hand. I didn't want no attention focused towards me. And to a degree, I'm still kind of, even at Lenox Lounge, I was a low-profile owner. I can work very well in the background, you know.
Now, this is what we didn't divulge to you, audience, that this was the owner of Lenox Lounge. The Lenox Lounge that you saw Shaft in. Okay, I'm sorry to break that up.
No, it's okay. No.
Okay. So now we're up to high school.
Yeah.
So after at the 369th Armory, when
Right.
you were a part of it, could you tell us, for the people that may not know about the 369th Armory? I know I'm a Harlem black girl, so I know
Yeah.
about the 369th Armory. Could you tell us a little bit about that armory?
Oh yeah, it's got a great history. Especially that armory went to France.
Oh, and tell them where is the 360? It still exists today.
Right.
And tell them where it is.
It's right off of Fifth Avenue, but somewhere part between Lenox and Fifth Avenue at 144th Street and 143rd Street, and it has a great history, and it's a big building. It's a armory there, and they do have functions for the local community, and they went to France back in the Second World War or something like that, and they whipped butts, if I could say that.
Yeah.
And they gave them the highest honor of the troops, and then they brought jazz to France and stuff like. They brought their musicians. They played music, so they introduced the American jazz, to Europe, and they're known for that. So
Wow.
but my experience in there was not too great when I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Very prejudiced. We used to hear about there's a track, and there's two sides of the track. Black folks is on one side of the track. So we used to joke with that, but that was true. When we went to Oklahoma, they had a train running right through the town, and the blacks on one side and the white on the other side. We were in uniform. And on the other side of the track, we couldn't go into the stores.
You know, it really always amazed me when you're fighting for the freedom
Absolutely.
of all people,
Absolutely.
and how there were some people who were prejudiced against the same people who were fighting for them to have the freedoms in which they enjoy.
Right. And some of them never experienced that, And we go to the movies. They wanted us to go to the back of the movies, and it was a straight ladder up to the balcony, and we had to.
Climb the ladder.
We didn't. Me and the guys from New York, no. But the local people did it, and then we kind of we rebelled against it, and the local people, the local black people there, oh, don't be starting this now because y'all only going to be here for a little while.
And you're going to make it
And,
hard for
yeah,
us. Oh,
like that,
gosh,
you know.
I know those kind of,
But I excelled in that.
in spite of it.
In spite of it, I wind up being the leader of my platoon, carrying the flag. They had a competition of doing different movements, left, right, left, left. I won that. And then I took up surveying. Well, I left the 369 Armory to get training at surveying. I became a top-notch surveyor. You had to know a lot of math and all that. I didn't know I had it in me. You know, coming from high school and not doing that well and staying in the background. So I had a thing where I had to run the computer and to find out locations. And I had a 3-team, you know, one guy with the measuring thing, and then another guy with the bob that put it on the thing, and I had to put it all together. The job which was I was taking up was that was during the Korean War, so they was getting us prepared for that. And so I did very well, and most of the students that I went with, they didn't do well at all. And I was supposed to become a specialist when I came back to the 369. But what they did to me out there with their prejudice, they used to finger us out, yeah, you the black boy, and all this stuff like that, always call us like that. And so I stayed there for like 6 months, and then we came back, supposed to bring what we learned back to the 369. And I did very well. We had 4 tests, and if you do 65, each test you pass. So I was doing like 94, 86, 87, 93, which was more than was qualified for. So all my friends and everybody was excited for me because they didn't do well, and I tried to help them out and stuff like that. And they said, well, we're not going to give you all your marks until you get back to 369, which would be 3 months later. So when I came back, everybody was telling them how well I did and stuff like that. So they said, okay, we're going to make you a specialist and stuff. So then 3 months later, they called me in the office, says, you failed. I said,
But
I
wait,
failed.
no. After you were getting all of these outstanding grades before?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
we know that game. Go ahead.
And so they said, you failed. I said, failed? The other guy said, no, he did very well. I said, well, there must be a mistake. They said, well, we got the paperwork. Here's your DD 214. I said, I was so confused. And then I looked at it, they showed it to me. Not only that they failed me within 1 percentage point. And what we call that in the service was, they said, they use the phrase, oh, you got a screw in. But something like that, you got a royal screw in. And that's what they did. They made sure they weren't going to send back nobody who passed. And at that time, when I came back, I was just, I don't want part of this no more. I just can't. But what I didn't know, that the trade that I had learned, I didn't know that I could transfer that to a job. So I went and pushed hand trucks, cleaned bathrooms. And I had this, I knew it, but they didn't give me the mark. But I didn't know that there's survey jobs with buildings, and I was 17. I could have been a surveyor, you know?
Wow. It's so devastating. Every time I hear someone that was messed up by the system and the
Yeah.
prejudice. Is really devastating. But we're going to stop a little bit right now because I want everyone to stay tuned for part 2 because it's too much for one episode. Okay? And this, Mr. Alvin Reed, has been owner of the Lenox Lounge. And if you think these other stories are interesting, wait until he takes you to 125th Street and Lenox Avenue and tell you about some of the events that happened there. Mr. Reed, I just want to, before we finish this part of this clip, I know that you owned Lenox Lounge. Do you do any special activities now that with the population, like boat rides?
Yes. First of all, I would like to introduce my nickname. Most people in Harlem know me by nickname, and if I don't use it, my nickname is Buster. All my family, we got nicknames. So most people in Harlem know me by Buster. If you say Alvin Reed, someone might not even know me. But yeah, there's another part to it, and I hope you people.
We're going to do another part.
Yeah.
But I'd just like to talk about. I know that you have done reunions for
Yeah.
people to get together, and we have, now that we're older and we have a little bit more money, we have a sense of community. So could you tell us about some of the people you're trying to get together?
Yeah. This is my third year. This is my third year of doing this boat ride reunion. Consists of some of my Harlem Lenox Lounge customers, some of my school friends from high schools. We're doing some high schools, Charles Evan Hughes, Commerce, about 5 different high schools. And this is the third year of doing it. We have a nice boat on 23rd Street. It's on July the 28th. And it leaves from 23rd Street Pier on the East River, and it's from 7 o'clock to 11:30.
Okay, I would like for everyone to just listen to and look. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Buster Reed,
Yeah.
okay, for coming on Patrisha's Potpourri. As you know, everyone has a story. He's telling his story, and we're going to have a part 2 of his story about Harlem and the things that happened to him, and about Lenox Lounge, and we're going to have the music from Shaft, okay, when they filmed it in his establishment, Lenox Lounge.